And bam, we are live. What a treat tonight. Holy cow. What a treat. Bernie, what's up, buddy? Sevan probably doing some low intensity chatting to clear the lactate for today's podcast event number 3. I wish. I need to. I've been avoiding. Yesterday I did a workout in the garage at 20 degrees. My ears were hurting. My wife did 11 burpees on the minute for 10 minutes. And to be honest with you, I've been thinking about the elevation here and thinking, oh man, that's going to hurt. But I should probably do that tonight after this show. We are broadcasting from Coeur d'Alene. Thank you guys for joining us. Dan, what's up, dude? Working overtime today. The thing is this guy that's about to come on, I consider him the foremost expert on reporting from the border, Jorge Ventura. So anytime I can get him on, I'm stoked. And so every maybe once a month, I'll be like, Jorge, can you come on? And he'll be like doing something where he can't. And so I'm always ready to do a last minute Jorge Ventura podcast. And so I've been bugging him a little bit because of what's heating up there. So today I'm like, hey, dude, can you do it? And he's always cool. He always responds yes or no. And today he's like, yeah, let's roll. And look, there he is.
How we doing, bro?
What's up? Holy cow. So stoked to see you.
I know, dude. It's been a while, right? We haven't done one in like 6 months, maybe.
It's been a minute. Can you hear me okay? I just switched microphones.
Yeah, I can hear you.
Holy cow. Where are you right now?
I am in a hotel in Eagle Pass, Texas. So we are on the border. Just for some context for the viewers, guys, Eagle Pass has kind of been the epicenter of this border crisis. Last month, this area got around 2,000 people a day. If you guys seen those images where there's like thousands of migrants waiting to be apprehended, it was here in Eagle Pass. They're averaging 2,000 people a day. There was actually one day where over 4,000 crossed illegally in one time. You got Texas State Troopers here, Border Patrol. You also got Florida State Troopers. I don't know if people know this, but Florida State Troopers are still here on the border. They've been deployed for DeSantis for over a year. And if you guys have been seeing the news lately, Eagle Pass is also the area where there's an area called Shelby Park that basically Texas came in and took full control. They kicked out Border Patrol agents and said, no, we are going to basically have our own command center. We're going to put up a bunch of more that concertina wire and block migrants from entering. The Supreme Court actually ruled today that Border Patrol agents have the right to cut through that concertina wire that Texas has installed. So a lot of drama, but here in Eagle Pass has kind of been what I say the epicenter so far this last couple of months.
Hey, where is this thing that we're hearing about that could, I don't know if they're being hyperbolic about it, but they're saying it could be the start of a civil war. Is that at Eagle Pass?
Yeah, basically you have the state of Texas going against the White House.
Talk to us like we're idiots. Talk to us like we're little kids, because no detail is too small, by the way. Pretend like we don't know shit, please. Okay, go.
Yeah, so really quick, guys. So there's an area called Shelby Park on the border, and it's an area where it's been a hotspot for migrant crossings. Now, so many migrants come at once that Border Patrol, they've used this park to what they call is a staging area, meaning that let's say they get like 100 of migrants to come. They basically have these migrants wait there. There's Border Patrol agents there, but they have them wait there as they wait for buses to come, transport the migrants and take them to a processing center. So they call that a staging area. So what Texas is doing is Texas came in about a little bit more than a week ago and kicked all the Border Patrol agents out and said, no. We don't want this to be a staging area. We want to block migrants from even coming into the U.S. So they essentially kicked out Border Patrol in a way that we've never seen.
How does that work? Explain that to me. So how many are there, 50 Border Patrol agents there, or were there 100? Or you're basically saying the Border Patrol agents work for the federal government, and you're saying the Texas police versus the federal police. The Texas police came in and said, hey, we don't want you here anymore. What are the size of these groups?
So it varies, but there's basically there's hundreds of Border Patrol agents here in Eagle Pass. Now this area is Shelby Park. It's about 2.5 miles long. So what essentially this is kind of like the detail that I want to add kind of before we even get into it is essentially if you're a migrant and you set foot on U.S. soil, Border Patrol agent has to basically, by federal law, basically take you in, apprehend you, or do whatever. It has to be up to Border Patrol. Texas is playing the role of they don't even want that to happen. They actually want to block migrants. So that's why they're putting concertina wire. I don't know if you guys seen, but there's been viral videos of where you see actual like Texas National Guardsmen with riot shields, like blocking migrants from entering, going through concertina wire. So what basically I was speaking to the governor of Montana. What he says is you basically have dual missions between what the federal government is doing and then what the state. Right now, if you're a migrant and you cross illegally, that's why if you guys ever see my videos and I mentioned this to you several times, bro, is when under Biden, migrants are not scared of Border Patrol, meaning that like once they cross in the U.S., they actually look for Border Patrol because they want to be processed because they know that there's kind of a catch and release program that they'll be released inside the United States. Texas wants to stop any of that, so they don't want migrants to basically.
There's actual meeting areas. There's actual meeting areas and where they know the Border Patrol waits for them because they know that, like you said, thousands are going to cross.
Exactly. So
they can't just push them back. They can't just push them back.
So I mean, the thing is, Border Patrol right now is they're not playing any role of like deterrent. So that when I speak to agents who are morale is really low, obviously with this number of crossings. What agents tell me is that essentially they're now turned into basically Uber drivers for migrants, meaning that they don't block migrants from entering. Once migrants enter illegally, they look for Border Patrol agents. And a lot of these agents, now their shifts are literally driving basically a school bus, going down to the border, picking up 100 migrants, take them to a processing center, and then repeat that process for like 8 hours in a day. So that's why also morale is low because you're not seeing agents do the blocking and deterring. That's where Texas is trying to play a different role. They said, hey, we want to play the deterrence role. We want to play the blocking. That's why Texas has put shipping containers, that concertina wire. We're seeing now the Texas military now be kind of wearing these riot shields and then block migrants from entering. So we're seeing this historic battle between the state of Texas and now the federal government in a way that we've really never seen before.
Who's in the right? Is this like to the letter of the law? I'm not saying like what we want. Obviously, a lot of us want a country where there's a border and people get to come in not illegally but legally, so we can track them and they can follow the laws and the rules. But who's in the right here? Who does the state of Texas have the right to lay all of this barbed wire there and tell the federal agents, hey, don't move it? Who has the right there? Who has the rule of law there?
So Texas has the right to basically do what they just did, where they just kick out federal agents, kind of take control of this land. Now, this is where it's going to get tricky just because we've never seen this before, is that concertina wire is technically owned by the city of Eagle Pass. That's been installed by the state of Texas. That's been allowed by the city. Now you have the Supreme Court saying, well, Border Patrol agents have the right, if they're on the border, to cut through that concertina wire. And where we've seen this in the past is where you have a migrant essentially on the river on the other side of that concertina wire. Border Patrol essentially will cut through that wire and then take that migrant in. That happens a few times now where you either have migrants.
Are they obligated? Let me stop you one more time, Jorge. Are they obligated to do that by federal law? Are they obligated to cut the wire?
See, that's where as a border reporter, I'm learning about this, but this is where they are obligated. So technically, when that migrant reaches that concertina wire, if we're being technical, they're already on U.S. soil because one half of the Rio Grande belongs to Mexico, the other half American. So basically, if you're a migrant and right when you get to the middle of the Rio Grande, technically you are on American soil, and then that issue is basically taken by the federal government. So if you're a Border Patrol agent, you have to apprehend these migrants. That's where Texas has come in and put that layers of concertina wire, and like basically Texas is saying, we don't care if you're technically on American soil, but you're not going to enter into Shelby Park or that area. Now, if you're a migrant, all you really have to do, if we're just being honest, is just walk another mile or two down that river, and eventually you'll find a Border Patrol agent, and eventually you'll have to be taken in. So when I spoke with Texas DPS, because I've done interviews with like they're basically the top officials with Texas DPS. If they say
so bear with me, Texas. What's the acronym you're using?
DPS, which is Department of Public Safety, they're the ones who assign the state troopers on the border.
Okay.
Well, technically, they've been deployed to the border by the governor. So this all has been, and that operation is called Operation Lone Star, where Governor Greg Abbott has deployed Texas state troopers on the border. And what's interesting here, bro, I forgot to actually mention is if you're a single adult migrant, right? So let's say you're a male or female single adult. If you cross illegally right now into Shelby Park, Texas DPS is waiting for you, the state troopers, and they are arresting migrants and then charging them for criminal trespassing. Now, if you're a family and you manage to enter illegally, Texas DPS will still take you to Border Patrol, so they'll let U.S. Border Patrol handle that because obviously there's kids involved. That's going to be a whole other scenario. But if you're a single male or an adult and you cross illegally in the Shelby Pass, Texas DPS is actively arresting migrants right now, even charging them with criminal trespassing.
Talking about DPS is comparable to California Highway Patrol. Okay.
Yeah, that's actually a good comparison.
So let's dig in there a second. Where do they take these gentlemen when they charge them? Do they actually arrest them, cuff them, zip tie them, and take them to a holding facility?
So they'll take them actually to the local jail, and then it'll be up to the judge to whether to charge that migrant with a misdemeanor. What Texas DPS was telling me is they find this important because now that migrant technically has a criminal record in the U.S. if they try to re-enter again illegally. What's going to be interesting now is today the news came down. This was actually a great day to do the episode. Is today the Supreme Court ruled on the side of Biden. So tomorrow is going to be fascinating because I'm going to be at Shelby Park. So I'll be inside where Texas DPS has kicked the feds out. And we'll see if Border Patrol just comes in. We'll see if there's a battle at the gate. I mean, we really don't know. We're in some really unfamiliar territory. So this is all really going to get really interesting. You know, there's going to be a bunch of legal battles. But as of right now, the state of Texas is kind of like holding their ground. And they're not allowing Border Patrol agents in. Today also the Attorney General for the state of Texas, who is Ken Paxton. I don't know, Sevan, if we could pull up his tweets or whatever here, because I know we've done that in the past. But he's saying, hey, we're gonna fight this. So right now,
tell me, Jorge, tell me your Instagram account.
It'll be Jorge Ventura TV, I believe it should be. Yeah. Let me double check.
I don't have anyone working the back end. That's why we haven't been pulling anything up, and I apologize.
No worries, no worries.
But I do wanted to. Is that correct? I wanted to add
That's
your
correct.
Instagram account down here, so anyone who wants to, you can watch this. I'm not joking. This is the premier border journalist in our lifetime. We're so lucky to have Jorge here. If you want to watch this stuff unfold in real time, make sure you follow him on Instagram, and he brings all this stuff. Okay, I want to go back to this thing. Did you say that some people are being deported by DPS? Once they get if they get arrested, the judge can deport them. And how does that work?
So basically, the judge would decide whether to charge that migrant criminally with criminal trespassing. It's a misdemeanor; it won't be a felony charge, and then they could spend some time in jail. But after that, DPS will technically refer that migrant back to U.S. Customs Border Patrol. So it'll be up to Border Patrol on what they do after that. If that migrant is deported and then tries to enter illegally again, what Texas DPS is telling me is they find this system important because technically then that migrant will have already a criminal history. It'll be on record instead of just kind of being expelled with no type of record. At the end of the day, that migrant still has to be referred to Border Patrol because Border Patrol is the one who at the end of the day is going to make the decision to deport. You know, they'll do their own kind of processing and they'll kind of go from there. But as we know, and as you guys have been following my work and we've spoken on this podcast multiple times, majority of migrants or not, you know, a good chunk are still being released inside the U.S. with what's called an NTA. That's a notice to appear in court. I've interviewed numerous of these migrants that have been released inside the United States that actually don't have court till about 2027. Now we're finding out court dates far as 2030. So what does that mean really quick, right? So if you don't have a court date till 2030, what does this mean? That means that migrant now is technically legally allowed to be in the U.S. Now, they might not be legally allowed to work, but they are legally allowed in the U.S. The other flip side of the story is now you have Democratic governors like New York, in Illinois and Colorado saying, we're taking in so many migrants, it's running up the bill for taxpayers. They're pressuring Biden to basically allow these migrants to get expedited work permits to be allowed to work. But what's interesting is you're actually, you know, like I said, the other side of the story is you have Democratic governors saying we are taking too many migrants. It's running up the taxpayer funds. And this is just a quick stat. In New York right now, New York City on average is spending $8 million a day on taxpayer funds just to house migrants. So that's $8 million a day. According to the mayor's office, they believe that in about 3-4 years fiscally, they could be spending up to $12 billion just housing migrants. So what you have right now is you have Democratic governors even trying to urge the federal government to do something about the humanitarian crisis. Massachusetts has recently came out and was was asking residents, hey, if you have an extra room or two in your house and you can take in migrants, please help us. So it's
no, is anyone doing that? Have you heard of anyone doing
that?
No,
not right now. I think the most liberal person as of right now hasn't even done that. But what's interesting is last time that I spoke to you, yes, we've had Democrats complain about this issue, but now it's really turning the tide, and it's really becoming a political vulnerability for Biden. So we'll see how this kind of story unfolds. But last month was key in this immigration story because last month broke the record for the most migrant encounters. We're talking about over 300,000 migrants were encountered in just a month. That's essentially more than the population of the city of Cincinnati entering the United States.
Is that December of 2023? You're saying there were 300,000 encounters.
Exactly, and that's still not counting what we call the gotaways. So those are the individuals that enter the U.S. illegally that were detected by Border Patrol technology, but they did not have the manpower to apprehend those migrants. Another thing, I know I'm rambling here, but these are just
no. Go. I'm writing down questions for you for all this.
I just released a story today on my Instagram, so if you guys are interested in this story, check it out. But there's a Venezuelan prison gang who has known gang members crossing illegally into the United States right now. There's a 23-year-old Venezuelan migrant, a part of this Venezuelan prison gang. I believe it's called Tren de Aregua. I believe is how you pronounce this gang. They have a stronghold, I should say, in Miami. Obviously, Miami has a huge Venezuelan population already.
Yep.
So they've kind of embedded in the migrant population. And one of their members, he's a 23-year-old, just got charged for murder in South Florida. So we now know that this gang is actively in the U.S., according to some sources that I spoke with who actually gave me the information. This gang is in Miami, New York, and Chicago, but they have the stronghold in Miami. But we do know they have a presence in Chicago. Actually, Chicago Police Department in November got a warning to its officers saying, hey, watch out for known gang members who might be living, in the Venezuelan migrant population in Chicago. So now you have kind of the national security aspect of this story kind of developing, and now we have confirmation that there's this Venezuelan prison gang now operating inside the United States.
So has anyone ever been deported during the Biden administration? If you come across the border, does anyone ever get deported?
No. Now people are getting deported. The thing is, it's not at the rate that like a lot of folks are going to want it as, but I mean,
what's the determination of deportation? Like, why do some people get to come over and a bunch of questions? Why do some people get to stay and some get deported? How are they deported? Are they flown down to Argentina and be like, okay, start the trek again? And I guess those are the two things. How do they deport them, and how do they choose who to deport? Because the news is making it look like no one's getting deported.
So individuals are getting reported, but it's at a really low rate. And
do we know what the rate is? Do we know? Is it 5%? Why don't they deport everyone? Why don't they deport everyone?
We don't have the exact rate now. How it's normally supposed to be under immigration law is if you come in illegally, and let's say you go through the asylum claim. So basically, a judge has to weigh in if you have a credible fear for an asylum claim. If you don't, you're technically supposed to be deported after that because you don't have a legal right to stay in the U.S. If you do, then you'll go through the immigration process. You could be in the U.S. Now, under Trump, things were a little bit different because while you're going through the asylum claim, Trump had you remain in Mexico. That's very different, obviously, under Biden. Now, if you and this now, the other aspect is the U.S. has to have agreements with some of these countries. So let's say you come in from Turkey and they want to deport you back to Turkey. It's a bit difficult if the Turkish government doesn't have kind of an agreement with the U.S. to take in those individuals. So right now we do have agreements with like the Haitian government, Guatemalan, El Salvadorian, and a few others to just deport migrants illegally. Now some are going to be tougher than others. Now if you are an individual like a single male or single female crossing illegally, the chances of you getting deported are pretty high because you're not coming in with a family. If you don't know any individuals in the U.S. like have a sponsor, you have a pretty high chance The thing is, under the Biden administration, is many of these are going to what they call NTA. So it's going to an immigration court, but the courts are so backed up with the backlog. I think right now there's 3 million cases in the backlog, which is just, I mean, physically it's impossible.
I can't even believe that there's 3 million illegal aliens. Why do we call them migrants and not illegal aliens?
I mean, there's different terms. I go with migrant because that's just like the neutral term in when it comes to reporting. And a lot of these migrants, when they do get released, they're technically legally allowed to be in the U.S. So I go. If
with someone broke into your house, you would call them. You could call them a trespasser, but it's also a home invasion.
Yeah, I mean, you could go. I mean, with the term that you feel, whatever. I just go with migrant because it's. What people don't understand, and this is good, maybe you might disagree with my viewpoint here, but is if you just go with the reporting of saying illegal immigrants all the time, your reporting that starts to become where only a certain part of the population is looking at that reporting, and that population usually already agrees with you. So if I start reporting always with the word illegal immigrant or migrant, only conservatives will start to read what I post and things. And the thing is, the right already knows that this is an issue, if that makes sense.
Right.
I want to be getting folks from all different backgrounds to look at this issue. Because it is a humanitarian crisis.
Okay. Extra Sloppy says, I think more people were deported by Biden than Trump, but that would make sense because there's significantly more crossing the border, right?
Yeah, I mean, more people under Obama were deported under Trump. I don't know if that stat is real. If more migrants were deported under Biden than Trump, but I mean, it also might not be surprising because Biden is letting in. I mean, it's not even close. I mean, the amount of illegal immigration. I mean, all the legal immigration records are being set under Biden right now, including migrant deaths. I think that's something that we also forget is. We're having a record number of migrants die at the border, and where I'm at here in Eagle Pass, it's one of the epicenters because of the Rio Grande River. They're averaging about a drowning a day, including kids. So that's an issue that usually mainstream corporate media doesn't talk about is the humanitarian cost of this of kids dying and drowning in the Rio Grande River. That's another aspect of the story. And like I said, here in Eagle Pass, the average of drowning a day. I've done interviews with the Eagle Pass Fire Department because they're the ones usually who have to do the rescue or the recovering of the bodies. So many migrants are dying here in Eagle Pass. Local cemeteries are running out of room. The local sheriff actually had to order what they call freezer trailers from the state of Texas to start storing some of these deceased bodies because they don't have any room for the cemeteries. Also, they have another challenge of even trying to identify some of these migrant bodies, so they don't even know what country they're from. And then even if they do identify them, it's 9 times out of 10 that country doesn't even want to take in that deceased body anyway. So if a migrant from Venezuela had drowned here in the Rio Grande and they're able to identify that body, I mean, the Venezuelan government isn't going to take in that deceased body. So essentially, the local officials here in Eagle Pass are essentially stuck with an issue that, once again, it's the federal government that's supposed to be solving this issue, not up to little local Eagle Pass local officials to solve this.
Jorge, in Seattle, there's all the drug addicts on the street. They call them homeless, but taking care of the drug addicts has become an industry. It's a $1 billion industry. Is deportation and border crossing and this whole phenomenon we're seeing, is there a business around it also?
So when I speak with folks because there's a lot of kind of theories of why would a federal government allow this amount of mass illegal immigration. So right now what you do have NGOs who sometimes book the travel for these migrants, either the federal government is reimbursing them. So then you have kind of that aspect of, the more migrants we take in, the technically more money some of these NGOs are making. So you have that aspect of the story. The other one is, and this is a lot bigger, is by allowing this amount of mass illegal immigration, big corporations in the U.S. essentially have this huge new, labor workforce that they don't have to pay the same rate that they would have to do for American workers. Now, we are now finding out that some of that is true. And actually, the New York Times has done great reporting on this, where a lot of these migrant children who are coming into the U.S. are actually working in factories for I think $5 an hour, $4 an hour. It's kind of happening all over the Midwest and factories. So New York Times has done an investigation where they're finding a lot of these kids. There's a lot of what I say is let me stop there. If you guys remember, back around 2016, maybe a little bit before that, Bernie Sanders does an interview with a progressive reporter, and the progressive reporter asked Bernie Sanders, why don't we allow all the poor people in the world to come in the U.S. and start working and could make a living for themselves? And Bernie Sanders says that's a Koch brothers conspiracy, saying if you allow that much mass immigration, it's going to hurt American workers and wages, and essentially you have corporations that could just hire this huge new labor force and then don't have to pay American workers and families. That's essentially what we're seeing right now with this amount of mass illegal immigration, and you have also migrant children working in factories. So that once again, that hurts American workers and wages. And just talking about the political angle here, because a lot of interesting things are happening. Back in 2016, right? So that's when Trump beats Hillary Clinton for the first time he becomes president. Trump ran obviously on tough border, right? The whole build the wall was tough on border. What you start to see if you look at voting demographics and trends, Black men started flocking to the Republican Party. And the reason why Black men started voting GOP is because a lot of Black men are competing with illegal migrants when it comes to these factory jobs. So when you have tougher immigration law, it actually benefits Black men. And I think we're starting to see some of that trend back in 2024, where you're seeing the Republican Party obviously be staunch on immigration. You're seeing the Democratic Party being soft on this issue. And that's why we also see Black men once again start to trend towards the GOP, because they directly know immigration competes with their wages. So these are some of these issues that we have to pay attention to. Obviously, when it comes to white uneducated college voters, they've kind of been on this trend pretty early. But I find that one pretty interesting. So pay attention to that. But that's kind of another kind of theory I would say is huge labor force that could basically compete with the American worker.
What about this? I heard some crazy stat today that 12 million illegal aliens voted in the last Arizona election. I mean, that sounds crazy to me. Can illegal migrants vote?
So as of right now, illegal migrants can't vote. They have to be a citizen. So that
they
process
cannot.
They
cannot.
Yeah.
Okay.
Now I got to look at now. I know there's some states where like city level they're trying to let migrants like vote for like city council stuff. So that's a particularly different case. And I have to find out what exactly cities are doing.
But you've heard that theory, right? Where the Democrats are letting in all of these migrants to get votes. Is there any weight to that argument?
I mean, there's definitely a way to that. I think I forgot the city council woman's name, but she was in New York and she kind of said the quiet part out loud, where she says, "Hey, we need more voters in my district," when she was asked about illegal immigration. So you have that aspect as well. And like I said,
would they be voting illegally then? Is there an expectation that they would vote illegally?
I mean, as of right now, I don't see how any way that would be able to happen. And it's no migrant right now could basically vote in like a presidential election. But obviously, this is the long game. If you want to make the theory in that argument of that case is, in a couple years or a few years, that migrant could start voting in elections.
And are we seeing illegal migrants become police officers in California?
We have yet to see that. I know that some states have talked about that, but we haven't seen that in California. Now, obviously, that could change. Now, obviously, for those who've been paying attention, the Golden State recently opened up healthcare for illegal migrants that the state will pay for. So you have that aspect. So, but we don't have where illegal migrants are being hired as cops. I would say just yet, because this border story has been getting crazier. So anything new like this doesn't surprise me anymore.
Jorge, when during the so-called pandemic, there was, and still is now, kids were forced to take drugs that were prescribed by the federal government or by the state governments, federal governments, so that they could go to school. Kids, if they didn't take the drugs that were mandated, they couldn't go to their universities, they couldn't go to their schools. Were there mass injection programs at the border that the illegals were getting? Was every illegal given the injection?
No, and there was no requirement. What was actually interesting is we did a report back in 2021, I think, in McAllen, And these migrants, and it was at that time where I think like a lot of businesses were shut down. But
like in California, we couldn't even go to restaurants unless we proved we were injected. So I would have to assume that to come in the country, and like Novak Djokovic couldn't play in a tournament here, the greatest tennis player who ever lived, because he wasn't injected. Are you telling me that it wasn't like, okay, come in, but you have to take this injection? That wasn't even mandated?
Not only was that not mandated, but when those migrants entered illegally, they actually were not even required to take COVID tests. And this was proven to me by me. I spoke to these migrants, like at least like 20 of them. And they said we weren't required. Then not only that, but then they were released into the public. And then they were released after an NGO coordinated the travel with a plane ticket to essentially like their state of their choosing. So not only were they not required to even take a COVID test, but then they were put on planes and buses with the American public, during the time of, COVID and kind of the whole craziness with government overreach.
It kind of makes it seem like it was that kind of gap in the system makes it seem like it was all a facade, that it was theater and it was a hoax maybe.
And look, that's how a lot of people feel, and also inside Border Patrol, so that's why morale is low. The other interesting,
because they probably had to take the injection, right? The Border Patrol probably to keep their job had to take the injection.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is also coming with agents who had already got COVID, so they already had a natural immunity. They still had to take it, but no, migrants are not required to take it, and they could enter legally. But yeah, if you were a tennis star and you wanted like to fly in and do it legal way and into an airport and everything, apparently that was illegal during that time, man. But what another kind of thing that we've been reporting on that I think it's what find your viewers pretty interesting is we're still seeing a massive surge of Chinese nationals crossing into the U.S. illegally. And the reason why the Chinese is a particularly interesting story is obviously they're coming from China. It's a country that the United States doesn't have the best relationship with. Technically, the federal government has these Chinese nationals labeled as what they call special interest aliens. So they want to make sure they do deep background checks on these individuals, make sure they're not connected as members of the Communist Chinese Party. What makes the Chinese particularly interesting in this kind of immigration story is that once they make it to Mexico, Mexican cartels look at Chinese as a valuable commodity. And what I mean by that is a Chinese migrant is willing to pay up to $35,000 to be smuggled to the U.S. southern border, whereas a Venezuelan migrant, maybe the most they could offer is $6,000, maybe even less than that. So anytime you see Chinese migrants coming in illegally, always notice that they don't look tired or look dirty, because they don't have to do these large caravans in Mexico with like Venezuelans, Cubans, and Haitians. They're essentially told where to fly in, what hotels to get, and smugglers coordinate their travel. What's key in the Chinese immigration story is the country of Ecuador. And what I mean by Ecuador is Ecuador right now does not require a travel for Chinese citizens. So right now, thousands of Chinese citizens, what they do is they fly into Ecuador. From there, smugglers coordinate the travel to an area called Neocoli, Colombia. From Neocoli, Colombia, they'll take boats with smugglers and they'll get to Panama. And then from Panama, they go through the Darien Gap, and then they'll eventually make it into Mexico. And that's where Mexican cartels and criminal smugglers will coordinate that travel and then get them to the U.S. southern border. So in early December, I was in an area called Jacumba Hot Springs, California. So right next to San Diego, about 60 miles east, really remote area. And we continually ran into Chinese nationals every day. I actually had one of my videos went pretty viral where I took a video. It's about 40 seconds long, and it got a group of 400 Chinese men, Chinese nationals who just crossed, and they're coming in record numbers. So that's also another area to pay attention to is these Chinese nationals that are coming, and it's all starting with the country of Ecuador. So that's something that, folks, you got to remember is every nationality kind of has a different story on how they get to the U.S. because of travel visas, what country helps them out. Nicaragua plays also a huge role in this because Nicaragua allows a lot of migrants to directly fly into Nicaragua and actually skip the Darien Gap and then kind of continue their journey into the U.S., man. So the Chinese one is an important one to kind of keep your eye on as this whole thing continues to develop.
Yeah, it's interesting, and so I wonder if those countries have some sort of pretty obvious economic incentive to reduce the barrier to entry for those nationalities, especially knowing that the Chinese are coming with money. So it's probably a good deal for Ecuador.
Yeah, that's right. And like I said, if the Ecuadorian government, I think, there's a way. We're doing more research into this as we're getting more data, but there has to be a way where they're profiting, and there's been different agreements between Ecuador and China in the past. Nicaragua is an interesting one as well, because I was interviewing a Cuban who told me that Cubans essentially fly to Nicaragua because Nicaragua doesn't require a travel visa from Cubans because of the coziness of relationship between Castro in Cuba and then Daniel Ortega in Nicaragua, both leftist regimes. What's fascinating is what this Cuban told me is that to basically get a one-way ticket from Cuba to Nicaragua, it's about $5,000 for that flight ticket. And the reason why it's around $5,000 is because Cuban officials know that once that Cuban takes that flight to Nicaragua, they are not coming back. They're basically gone. So the Cuban government has basically right now is profiting off the humanitarian crisis by descendant Cubans that are paying $5,000, flying to Nicaragua, knowing that they won't come back. And basically, what a Cuban migrant told me is the airline workers kind of joke too. Like, so when you land in Nicaragua, the Cuban airline workers would be like, "Hey guys, enjoy your vacation. We'll see you in a week or two." Basically, knowing that that Cuban is never coming back, and then essentially they're going to go into the U.S.
Jorge, I heard a story where there were busing companies, and they were getting about $5,000 a head for transporting illegals out of the state of Texas. I was told that they also get $1,200 cash and a phone. Is there any truth to that story?
So right now, and this is when I got a lot of people reach out to me. So the whole busing thing that is done directly under the state of Texas. Mm-hmm. Now there are buses where an NGO will pay that busing company, and then they'll take migrants basically to New York or wherever those migrants want to go. So right now, busing companies are they making money? Yes, but it's not like in a legal way. It's not like this odd per head. It's basically an NGO contracting that busing company, or same thing here, state of Texas contracting that company. And there's also nothing illegal going on with the migrants. Migrants know where they're going. They approve this. They're not being forced. They're not saying, "Hey, get on this bus to Illinois. You have to go." It's migrants who basically want to go, and the state of Texas is essentially paying for the travel, or an NGO is paying for the travel. Now, as of right now, we found no proof of migrants essentially going to a location and then given like $1,200 in cash. We heard rumors where they were giving like $5,000 debit cards by NGOs. We just haven't found any of that.
Okay.
But I mean, are they going to get basic services from NGOs? Like, could they get them a cell phone? I mean, sure. I mean, the cell phone is not the hardest thing in the world to get. Right now, sometimes Border Patrol gives them cell phones with just really basic services. This is also for Border Patrol to know where that migrant is. So yes, the federal government has done this, but we haven't had anything regarding the money part where they're getting $1,200 or they're getting $5,000. We haven't found that. Are they handing out phones? Are they handing out phones by the thousands? That isn't happening. It's everything okay. What's odd is everything is like a case by case. So it's this isn't happening on a mass scale. The money part for sure isn't happening. I mean, we would have got wind of that really early, and that's something that would have got exposed if something like that. Even the story was even reporting that people were getting money, then they would cross back into Mexico, come back again, and they were basically just rotating in and out. But you've just heard rumblings of it. You have no proof of that. No, you haven't seen a center like that or any agents tell you that. And I would advise a lot of your viewers is maybe folks who are posting this, sometimes there's just a political commentator, meaning that essentially a political commentator, they could just say this without having to prove it. I'm in the role as a journalist, meaning that I can't say something if we don't have the proof. We reported it or we saw it. So everything that I'm talking about is things that we basically have verified. We saw it. It is a fact. That's why we could talk about it. So if people, it's easy to say, migrants are coming in, they're getting $5,000 debit cards. I get that. If you're a commentator, you can say that, you can rile up your audience. But as a reporter, I can't go and make those claims without, actually
I appreciate it
and everything like that.
We saw a guy being interviewed on the Nation saw a guy being interviewed on Fox in New York City the other day, and he was saying we get here and it's not what we expected, and things are bad, and we basically have to resort to stealing. Is there an uptick in crime?
So there is an uptick in crime. So if right now Chicago, what they're finding is they're finding a lot of not a lot, but kind of a gang of Venezuelans have been committing robberies,
Uh-oh. You froze. Did Jorge freeze for you guys or just for me? It looks like my connection is strong. Anybody? Did he freeze for you guys? I don't see Jorge moving. Bernie Gannon, the current administration is lying to the American public about this and the issue surrounding it. They're embarrassed and incompetent to stop it. Yeah, frozen. Okay. Maybe he'll log off and come back in. Man, he's just a fucking fire hose of information, right? I mean, he's seen so much. Let me see. I'm going to kick Jorge from the studio, and let's see if we can get him back. Resend him the link. Maybe his phone died, for all we know, right? And bam, resend him a link and see what pops up. Let me know if you have any questions you'd like to pile in here too. Okay, Venezuelan gang in Chicago. There are some reports of some stealing there.
I don't want to say Venezuelan gang, but there are individuals inside the migrant Venezuelan community that are committing crimes right now in Chicago, robbing stores, assaults. This is also happening in New York City as well. What you have right now is, let's just talk about Chicago, New York right now. Okay. You have two cities who are taking in hundreds of thousands of migrants and have now completely overwhelmed. Shelters are overrun. There is no space for migrants.
Why did they take in those migrants? Why are they taking in those migrants?
Well, so two reasons this is happening. This is not because New York openly said we want to take in migrants. Now that New York City has openly said we are a sanctuary city. We're not going to deny migrants. We want to be a city with open arms.
They also get housing there, right? What the implications of a sanctuary city is, you can come here. We won't let ICE come and get you, and we'll give you shelter.
Yes. Now I gotta look at Chicago's laws, but New York has a right to shelter law. So meaning the city has to shelter you if you are a homeless person. Now the mayor, who is a Democrat, supporter of Biden, the situation has gotten so out of hand. Even the mayor wants to suspend that rule, because they've been completely overwhelmed. So you have, and just to answer your first question of why the city took them in, first of all, they're sanctuary cities. The other aspect is the state of Texas turned it up a notch. And what I mean by that is, when they got overwhelmed, they said, you know what? Let's have you guys deal with it. So they started putting those migrants on buses and just started sending them to New York and Chicago. So the cities essentially
they've sent that many. Man. They've sent so if there's let's say just for easy math, there's 100 people per bus. And let's say there's 100,000 migrants in New York. Do you think New York has sent 1,000 busloads of migrants up to New York? Do you think Texas has done that?
No, Chicago has sent a good amount, but still the majority are still arriving from nonprofits and NGOs. They're the ones who are coordinating the travel.
So do you think that these NGOs, why are they doing that? Why are they doing that to please Governor Abbott?
No. So what they do is they basically tell the migrant, hey, where do you want to go? Like, where's your final destination?
What is it? Why? Give me an example of what an NGO is. Why are they doing that? Where are they getting their money?
Kind of like they're like Catholic charities on the border, right? And the Border Patrol, a while back, the federal government made an agreement with an NGO saying, if essentially we get too overwhelmed with the amount of migrants that come, we'll hand them off to you after we've done the processing, and you take care of the travel. Meaning, two ways: either you get a family member to pay for their bus ticket or plane ticket to whatever state they want to go to, or that migrant, or whatever. Or that NGO will basically purchase it themselves, so that charity will buy the ticket. So let's say you want to go to Indianapolis. Okay, we'll put you on a bus or ticket to Indianapolis. They'll have that receipt and then show it to the federal government, and the federal government is going to reimburse that NGO. So
it's not just all on Governor Abbott. It's also the federal government is offering relief to the state of Texas by causing chaos in other places, and people are choosing Denver, Chicago.
Remember, these NGOs just want to get these folks to the final destination, because NGOs are also overwhelmed themselves. Even the NGO themselves is running out of room. So they say, where do you want to go? And they say, we got family in New York. All right, boom, you're going to New York. Where do you want to go? We want to go to Denver, Chicago. And that's where those migrants are headed. What's interesting, man, is notice how these Democratic mayors, they only criticize the state of Texas when they do it, but they never criticize the federal government when they send migrants to their cities. So basically these cities have taken in so many migrants then they can no longer shelter them. And then you have the aspect where these migrants technically are not illegally allowed to work. So if you're a migrant in Chicago, and let's say you're sleeping in a Chicago police station right now, which many of them are, you can't just go to the 7-Eleven or the Target and apply for a job because you technically are not illegally allowed to work. So that's why you have mayors saying, if you're going to send us all these migrants, at least expedite a work permit and get these guys working. So that now you have all these other aspects. But right now, many of these migrants, they're coming to the city of Chicago. They're enduring some brutal cold conditions, in the freezing snow. They have no shelter to go to. And many of them are saying, this is not worth it. And this is what happens when cities get overwhelmed and they are literally running out of resources. And right now, actually today, and I sent a tweet about it, the state of New York through Governor Hochul has basically pinned a letter to President Biden saying, dude, we need $1.4 billion when it just comes to housing migrants. So she sent a letter along with 8 other state governors. So this thing is really heating up. And like I said, right now, migrants are essentially living on the streets in cities like Denver, Chicago, and New York, and they're not allowed to work as well. And this is all still being paid by the taxpayer. So if you're a taxpayer, you are footing the bill for this, especially in New York. Like I said, they're spending $8 million a day in housing migrants. I mean,
can you just go to New York City and feel the impact of it now? If I flew into JFK and I was walking around downtown Manhattan, would I feel the impact of this?
Yeah, I mean, according to my friends that live in New York and local reporters that I follow as well, it's impacted every part of life. If you remember, man, I mean, just like around a week ago, around that time, they had the whole issue where it was too cold at one of the migrant shelters that they had to move a bunch of migrants to like a middle school, and they had to cancel, class for the kids. It had this whole ordeal. So right now, even Democrat voters have been completely affected by this issue. Like I said,
why don't they all go to San Diego? I mean, I don't want them to, but why don't they all go there?
Well, many of these migrants that do cross into San Diego, because this is happening in San Diego as well. It's all about their final destination. So their final destination is not San Diego. It's another major city or whatever.
For some reason, they want to go to somewhere else.
Yes.
What about this story that we heard that the Denver hospital system has collapsed? Is that true? There's so many migrants demanding medical services that Denver's hospital system is collapsing, or is that hyperbolic? No,
that is true. Now, I don't know if it's collapsing, but I do know they got like $20 million in unpaid bills. So what's happening right now for that hospital is, I'll explain it like this because I'll speak more from what I've seen. So I'm here in Eagle Pass, right? And this is, like I said, has been an epicenter in the border crossing. So let's say there's hundreds of migrants being processed, and there's a couple medical emergencies, or migrants have been injured crossing. The local fire department here and local ambulances, which I think they only have like 10 ambulances for the whole county, so it's very understaffed. They then have to go pick up these migrants, attend to their medical emergency, and if they need, to be taken to the hospital, they have to be then taken to the hospital. All that falls on the city of Eagle Pass to pay for it. The migrant isn't going to pay for that. So when I spoke to the local fire chief, what he told me is that in the year of 2023, basically the fire department with the local hospital lost $500,000 just in attending migrants and serving medical emergencies, and then the city doesn't get paid for it. So right now, the city of Eagle Pass essentially is begging the federal government to be reimbursed. We're seeing this right now in Denver and also in the state of Massachusetts, I believe in Boston, where their major hospitals are serving so many migrants, and it's obviously going unpaid for. They're just stacking up so many bills, and all this is falling on that hospital to pay for the overtime, extra equipment. It really impacts a city like Eagle Pass that's really small. Like I said, they only have like 8 to 10 ambulances for the whole county. It also affects the citizens. So if you're a citizen who has a major emergency, there's a good chance it's going to be delayed because that ambulance is being deployed to the border and it's attending a migrant. So what Eagle Pass told me is that around 500,000 calls, and they're averaging, I believe, could be 30 to 60 calls a day or a week, I believe, just attending to migrants strictly and not to the citizens of Eagle Pass.
Why does the federal government care what the state is doing? Why don't they just accept the barbed wire as support?
Well, see, that's a good question. I mean, this is just my kind of perspective on this issue. I believe if this was happening under Trump, he would allow it. I don't think he would go to bat with the state of Texas. The Biden administration has just, they are just so against any Republican demand on the border. I don't think they want to cave to them in any way. And that's why I think they're willing to go to court. They're willing to get the Department of Justice involved. So right now, like I said, like when you in terms of border security, I mean, this is not even my opinion. I mean, you could just look at the numbers show it. I mean, the federal government isn't doing any of that. So you really have the state of Texas kind of put in this corner saying
they're not there. There's no the federal government isn't doing any border security. They're doing immigration docenting. They're facilitating the immigrants coming in, is what you're saying.
And you also have an issue where Governor Greg Abbott last year had to run for re-election. Now, he was always going to win his seat. It wasn't even going to be competitive, but he did have Republicans run against him who even demanded that Abbott do more. You know, they said, hey, we know Biden failed, but what is the state of Texas is doing? So I think Abbott also got put into this corner in a way to kind of react. They're kind of doing what they're doing right now, where they've taken over Shelby Park. They're arresting migrants that cross illegally. They kicked out Border Patrol. According to Abbott and to the Attorney General, they are going to welcome this lawsuit from Biden. They're willing to go to court. And I think it's a win for Abbott, because he could also go back to his voters and say, hey, I'm being tough on the border. I'm taking on the state of Texas. I'm the only border state who's actively fighting with the administration. And Abbott also has the Attorney General on board. If the AG is also willing to go to bat, we have a battle. We're going to have a showdown. And I think tomorrow is going to be a fascinating day. I can't wait to get into Eagle Pass. And I mean, I'm here in Eagle Pass, but I can't wait to get into Shelby Park and see the dynamics between, you know, Border Patrol agents and Texas DPS with the Texas military.
How many will be there? How many of these state troopers will be there versus how many federal agents?
I mean,
on each side. Do you
right
know?
now
Will it be 50 and 50 or 100
right
and 100?
now there's not any federal agents at Shelby Park now. They are being allowed. The only thing the Border Patrol agents are allowed to do is access a boat ramp, which gives them access to the Rio Grande. But that's it. They're not allowed to conduct normal operations. There's hundreds of Texas National Guardsmen and DPS. Not only in this area,
the National Guard is there. The National Guard is there.
Yeah. So when you see viral videos of the riot shields, that's Texas National Guard. So basically what you have is if you have two state factions. You have Texas military, which is Texas National Guard, and then Texas state troopers under Texas DPS, essentially working together and doing this kind of border showdown. The thing is, what DPS is telling me, Texas state troopers, they're saying is, hey, we're there to help Texas military. They're the main ones in control, but it is Texas DPS where if a migrant crosses illegally and they're a single male or a single female, they're the ones who are doing the arrest, either charging. And, you know, well, obviously that's going to be up to a local judge. So they're doing that aspect of this operation.
Any talk of expanding the National Guard's role? Like, fuck it, this is working at Eagle Pass. Let's get even more. And have any other states offered to send their National Guard?
Yes. So one interesting thing is when you are here in Eagle Pass on the border, you will also see Florida state troopers. So DeSantis about a year ago deployed Florida state troopers to the southern border. And what's kind of interesting about that angle is that's being paid for by the state of Florida. So they're not giving the bill to Texas or Abbott. They're essentially helping the administration with that. What's, you know, if you want to talk about a political aspect, and this is what I find interesting just as like the political nerd aspect, is you have a Florida governor who sent his own state troopers, deployed them to the Texas border to assist Texas officials. Florida is paying for it, yet the governor of Texas still endorsed the opponent of DeSantis, which, you know, Abbott ended up endorsing Trump. So that's kind of an interesting angle there. But Florida state troopers are still here. They've been deployed over a year ago. That's being paid by the state of Florida. Now, other states have also sent their state troopers here, but they've been deployed in like maybe a few months or a month-long operation, and then they come back. I know Montana did. I believe South Dakota did, and I know a few other Republican states sent their own National Guard. But Florida still right now is actively on the border, and as of right now, DeSantis has not recalled those Florida state troopers back to Florida yet.
Jorge, awesome, dude. Thank you so much, man.
Hey, thank you,
54
man.
minutes of just straight information. I fucking love it. You the man, dude.
Wait, where are you headed tomorrow? Where are you traveling to?
I'm in Idaho, and it sounds like tomorrow we're going to go somewhere else in Idaho. So
nice,
that's
man.
it. Yeah.
Perfect. And yeah, I would, you know, if anyone is interested in this whole kind of border showdown now between the feds and the state. I would recommend following my Instagram because I said tomorrow is going to be an interesting day. I'm on the ground right now in Eagle Pass. We'll be on the ground continuing that, and we're always working on new stories. We have a Tijuana cartel story coming up. I can't say too much, but stay tuned for all that. And yeah, man, it's always great talking to you. Let me know when you want to have me on, and if we can make it work, we'll definitely make it work.
Yeah, I always appreciate your quick responses. All right, brother. Be safe, and we'll be watching at Jorge Ventura TV. Thanks, brother.
Perfect. Awesome. Take care, guys.
Ciao. Booyakasha. Crazy, right? I could talk to him another hour, but I gotta get ready for Jimmy Letchford tomorrow. President Goruck. I gotta pee. Drink my 5th sparkling water. Who was saying I was getting my words mixed up? I wasn't getting my words mixed up. What are you talking about? All right. Thanks, guys. Fun show. Thanks for Caleb and Matt for getting this scheduled up last minute. Tons of so much fucking cool content coming out. I will talk to you soon. Thanks for all your support, you guys.